Alright YouTube, we've got a cool project today. We're going to give ourselves a bit more privacy and some peace and quiet in this room by installing a door in this hallway. Background on this project is I needed a door in this hallway / stairwell because noise was really an issue and it really acted almost like an echo chamber. So I got some quotes. The prices were around $1,000. One of them was even as high as $1,500. That was just way too much and there was no way I was going to pay that. But the bigger problem for me was I couldn't find a video out there that showed you how to just put a door in over drywall in a situation like this. First thing I'm doing here is laying out the very first stud. This is going to be the stud that the hinges are going to hang off of, and everything else will be based off of this. You can see right away is that the stud is going to hit the trim on the bottom of the wall. So I need to mark this so I know where to make a cut, and I'll show you how to do that using a pretty cool saw. Now that I've got it marked, what I'm going to do is use my oscillating saw. As you can see here, there's many brands of these. This particular one is a fine. I've also got my vacuum set up to pull the dust in and keep the area a little bit cleaner. This saw works great. It plunges right in and really makes a surgical cut and doesn't ruin your wall in the process. I'm continuing on with the cuts now. The saw really is fantastic as it plunges into the trim. What I'm trying to do here is just cut into the sides of the trim to separate it, and then I'm going to cut the back so that I can completely remove this block, and then the stud can sit flush to the wall. Most often when you cut this trim out, it's going to come off as soon as you cut the sides, but in this case it was a little bit frustrating, took a little bit more work, and I had to cut the sides and the top, but it did come out like you can see here. Now it's ready for the stud. A couple other points here. I actually use liquid nails behind this stud as well to help adhere it to the wallboard. Additionally, I'm putting 3-inch screws directly through the stud into a wall stud as well. But what you're looking at here are the two studs right and left once I was done. So this is beginning to form the framework for the door. So now we're installing the header stud. This is going to go directly onto the ceiling as shown. So when you're installing a doorway or any sort of studs on top of drywall, it's not always a perfect installation, so you have to make some adjustments. So what I'm doing here is lining it up and checking some measurements to make sure it'll fit. So one of the pitfalls of putting studs on top of drywall is that you're not always going to be able to hit a stud when you are drilling into it. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually going to use molly bolts or toggle bolts to hold the top stud to the ceiling. And what I'm doing is just using a vacuum cleaner as I'm drilling to just keep the dust down. Getting heavy-duty molly bolts is a good idea. They hold the stud secure and they can really keep things tight. Another thing in this installation that I'm doing is you can see I put liquid nails on the back of that stud to also help it adhere to the ceiling. And you can see those toggle bolts, now they're starting to press into the ceiling. You want to make sure that they fit properly, and once you push them up, those little ears will pop open. It helps hold it in place. Now we're just tightening up the molly bolts. This will make sure that they're good and tight, have the stud pull tightly against the ceiling, and that liquid nails will also be an extra bond that should help out as well. This next step is probably optional, but I wanted to make this doorway as strong and secure as I could, just so that it could hold up over the years and be able to take any potential abuse it might get. So what I'm doing is I'm actually using right angle brackets, and I'm just putting 2 screws in each edge of the corner to really tighten the frame up. Now I'm just doing the same on the opposite side. Now what we've got to do is we've got to put the top stud, and this is going to be where the top of your door will actually rest on, so this will vary depending on what kind of door you choose. So now our framing's complete. Let's take a look at our finished product. In addition to the top 2 studs, I put some braces up there as well for extra strength and to give me a spot to screw my air vent into when it's done. So I carefully measured this so that I could fit the largest door possible, and now that the framing's done, we're going to put the door in. One thing that made this door installation pretty easy was that I used a thing called Quick and Easy Door Hanger or Quick Hanger. what you do is you screw those clips to the side of the door, and then the door just slips into place, which is exactly what you see here. So if you feel like you missed a lot, you really didn't. All I actually had to do was put those clips on and push the door in place. So this is another shot of those clips. You can see them sticking out the side, but when the door is finished and the trim goes up, you won't see them at all. Well worth the $5. It made the installation a breeze, and you don't have to use regular shims that you may or may not have. So now that the door was in, the last thing to do is to put the trim up around the edges, and you can see it really finishes it off. When you're doing work like this on top of drywall or in a hallway, you need to be able to be prepared to make adjustments. So on the left-hand side of the door, the trim didn't fit perfectly. It was a little too snug. So I used a planer, and I just planed off about 1/8 of an inch, and then it fit great. Now in this situation, I was able to get a door that fit the opening, and you can too depending on the size of it, but it really pays to look at the rough dimensions of the door at the store beforehand and try to plan out your work ahead of time. So I'll still be finishing that opening, and what the point of that is to allow airflow. So I'm going to be ordering some custom grills that'll fit that space, and it'll look really neat when it's done, but it will allow air movement between the two rooms, and I won't have any issues with heating or cooling. So the main installation of the door is now done, so let's take a look at it from the bottom of the stairs. The door fits in nicely, does the job, and it really looks pretty good. Needs a coat of paint or two, and it needs to have that air vent done, but the main part of the project is complete. So that wraps up putting this door in. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you would click on the thumbs up. It really helps me out. And also click on subscribe so you'll know about videos as soon as I release them.